Okay, so today we're going to talk about watercolor pencils. Okay, now as you can see from this paper, this is how I would like you to lay it out. If you've not already done so, please take a moment and pause the video and fill out each of these sections just the way this is. Okay? All right, so for this tutorial, okay, for watercolor pencils, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need 4 pencils, okay. Honestly, we'll probably use maybe 2, but you can change them up. So you're going to need a couple of pencils. You will need, move this out of the way, paintbrush. All right. Now, just a reminder that these are round and these are flats, so we are using a small area. So I would like you to get a small round and a small flat. You're going to need water. Now, as you can tell that this water dish, the water is very low, so I would like you to make sure that you have low water. Now, when you go and wash off your paintbrush, you wash the dirtiest one goes on the one side. You then designate which one is going to be your second to wash off. So if I wash it off here, then go to this one, tap it off. Last one, tap it off. You'll always have clean water, okay? Now, another thing you will need for this practice, okay? Paper towel, so you can dry things off. All right. And last but not least is sandpaper. Okay. So the sandpaper is actually in with the blending stumps, and you don't need to, take a new piece off. It should be just fine, just the way this is. Okay. Now, a couple of things about the colored pencils is that for the colored pencils, I prefer you not to use the regular pencil sharpener. I'd rather you use the handheld sharpeners to sharpen these. And honestly, you don't need to get them to a point. If you do, that's fine. But you can actually do quite a bit with just them being like this way. They are different. Please do not let them be in with the regular pencils, okay? So if you see them with the regular color pencils, please remove them, put them in the paint area, okay? All right, so we're going to talk about a couple of things. Here we go. All right, so when we're using color pencils, we know that we can make them light and dark doing different things, okay? Well, same thing with regular, watercolor pencils. So if we want to do a light color, we're going to lightly put it on the paper, okay? If we want a darker, you press a little darker. Now, the paper that I'm working with is watercolor paper. It's a little thicker. Okay, you can kind of hear that. If you use this on regular paper, it might start eating up the paper, okay, and what's called overworking the paper because there's so much water, the paper can't handle it. This is thicker, so the paper can handle it. All right, we're going to use a round, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip in for a little bit of water, okay, and I'm going to go over this. Didn't have a lot of water on this because I don't want to oversaturate or make it too much. All right, so light pressure, light. Add some more water, and normally when I do this, you might hear me a couple times when I add water, you might hear me tap off the water. Get into the good habit. All right, and then darker, obviously darker, okay? All right, so the next one, mixing and filling in. All right, now with regular pencils, watercolors, when we want to fill in other spaces, we need to make sure that areas are dry. Because if everything's all wet, it's all going to bleed. Now, for this one, we're going to mix some colors. So I want you to grab 2 different colors, okay? So I'm going to grab these colors, and I'm going to mix a color inside. All right, so I'm going to mix a color. I go through, and I'm going to color nice and lightly. All right, go to the other side. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, because it will mix later, all right? And then I think the outside, let's mix another color. I'm going to go really light in some spaces so you can kind of see how that works. And I'll put a little bit of purple. Just a teeny bit. All right. Now, by the way, if I'm ever going too fast, you can stop and, pause the video so you can catch up, which is absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm going to use my round to do the center, and I'm going to tap off some of this water, okay? And I'm just going to go in, and I'm going to mix this water. Now you can tell that I'm kind of going like little circles, so I mix the color around. Now when you get close to edges, you need a nice controlled brush. That means if your brush is too big for the space, you're probably going to lose control of your brush. But if you have a small brush for the small space, it works out pretty well. Pretty cool, all right? I'll wash off my brush. Now, I'm going to switch to a flat, all right? So here we are with my flat, all right? You tell flat because the top is flat. Add a little water. Now, the reason I'm switching over is because I have a flat space right here. So I can go and paint back and forth and go right up to the edge because there's no puddles on it, so it should be okay to go right up to it. All right, so I'm gonna mix it all the way around. You don't want it to bleed. All right, so nice flat edge, flat space. All right. All right, so we have that. Beautiful. Okay, now on to gradation. There's 2 different ways you can do it, actually, which is kind of neat with this. So we could start off, try purple, by doing a nice gradual effect. You should know how to do this because we practice gradation with colored pencils so much, all right? Take a little bit of water, and as you drag it out, it will fade out. Pretty cool, right? Yeah. This one, a little different. Picked a different color. We're going to make this nice and dark here. Instead of us dragging out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this nice and wet, and I'm going to pull it all the way down. And it tends to just fade out, okay? And I can go back here, pull it down a little bit more. Pretty cool. All right, so lifting. Lifting is kind of neat. We need to put some color down first, so we're going to just put some color down. Right. Now lifting, I am going to put a little bit more water on my brush, okay, than normal, and I'm going to move quickly. And by the way, you're going to need a little piece of paper towel for this, so grab a little piece. All right, so we're just going to mix this up, all right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm going to just lift up some spaces, okay? It kind of makes it like a nice haze. It gives it a nice texture. Also, by the way, if let's say you accidentally get some, like right here, you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. If you add some water, you can actually lift it up so it's almost like it's erased too. So lifting gives it a cool texture. Lifting also helps correct some stuff. All right, so another cool texture thing right here is the sandpaper. You're like, what in the world is that? So one thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to actually need when your color pencils, make sure they're dry, okay? So wet and dry. Well, let's just do dry. So what I'm going to do is, you see how what's going on is as I do this, little pieces come off. Okay? Kind of like a splatter effect in a way, all right? So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to take a round, actually. And if I just lightly go over it, okay, and like little bits, it almost gives the effect of like birch, like the trees, how it has that speckled effect, okay, like there. So it gives a really neat effect of it being speckled. All right. Now you can do this a little bit different. Now this one you'd have to kind of move a little bit on the fast. You wet the paper. Okay, hard to see that. Woo! Pencil flew on the floor. Get some colors. Oh, did you see that? That was super cool. Okay, I'm gonna leave that there because that was such a cool effect for, you know, bleeding. I wonder if it would happen if I actually add a different color too. Oh, not so much, but it's still really cool. Okay, so what that one did was that I wet the paper, and when I added on it, it actually dispersed, which is cool. So this one's dry, really cool. All right, so let's move down to the bottom over here. Overpainting. Overpainting is pretty cool. We're actually going to start this and come back to this, which is good. All right, so let's start with this. We're just going to put some paint on this, you know, color over it. And we're actually going to come back to that, okay? So we'll let that dry. Now, paintbrush. You're like, well, we've already looked at paintbrushes. Watch. So I'm going to do a round. All right, I'm going to wet this. You can actually do this. It's pretty neat. Take this and you could paint the brush. Blue. All right, so I got that there. And kind of like a traditional paintbrush, you can do this. Now, I said, remember, I was going to come back to that. I'm going to put some more paint on this. Make this really, so you notice that this one's a little bit darker because there's a lot of paint on there. Okay. I want to add like little small birds on my thing. Okay. So this is over painting. So you can actually paint on top of paint, which is pretty cool. All right, flat. So a flat brush, you can do the same effect, but here's a cool thing with a flat brush. Because it's flat, it's got a wider area, you can actually put a couple of colors on. So I'm going to put one color on this side, and then, ooh, let's put blue on this side. Okay. Pretty neat. And isn't that ridiculously awesome? Okay. So I can blend it. All right, so that's that. Okay, almost to the end. Adding color. So let's change our color. Let's make a nice little circle. Okay, I'm gonna color this in, not too dark. Add my, you know, I'm gonna use a round. Paint this in. And by the way, if you're ever not sure, like I have, sometimes I'll grab my colored pencils thinking that, you know, my watercolor pencils, thinking that they're actual watercolor pencils. If you go and actually try to add water to regular colored pencils, you'll know immediately that they're not the right thing. All right, so we're gonna let that dry because we're gonna add color on top of that. Wet. Oh, so this is neat. This is almost doing this reverse. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna wet the surface and then take the colored pencil and draw on top of it. Okay, it makes for such a dark color. For some reason, it makes it super dark, so if you need super dark, wet the surface first, then color on it, and then you can add on to it. Check that out. Isn't that pretty cool? All right, let's go back to this one. So this is pretty much dry, which is cool. So we're going to add onto this, and if yours is not dry, take a moment, just, blow on it a little bit. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're actually going to add more color onto this. All right, I'm just going to add a little bit more color onto it to make it look like it's got some shading. So I'm going to take this and go right on top of it. So if, let's say, you come back tomorrow and you're like, oh, I wish I add more color onto that, you can actually. All right, so there we go. Adding a little bit more color. Actually, because I'm being picky, I think it would look really cool if I had like some cross hatching. Oh, that's so neat. And then when I pull this out, oh, that is just, I don't know why, the word humdinger comes out. I don't know, it's kind of cool. All right, so we have that. Last one, traditional. All right, so one of the things that I've found through my research is that if you're, for some reason, you want to just paint, when you don't have all these colored pencils or you can't bring them home and you need to work on this at home, okay? Now, I don't know if you have them, but I know that my kids, they would get those big pads and they would have the circles at the top and they're like, oh, just add water to these, okay? They're actually watercolor pencils. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna color in really hard at the top, okay? And we're gonna make our own little palette tray, all right? Really hard. There we go. And we're just gonna paint something. Paint some waves, okay? So I'm gonna take this and use this almost like as if it's like a watercolor tray. So I'm gonna use a little bit more of this, all right? Ooh, maybe if I can add a little bit more. Cool. All right, so you can do it this way. So if you are headed home and you can't borrow my pencils for some reason, I don't know, you can make your own like little palette little piece of watercolor, color in, and then you have these. They'll dry, and by the way, when they dry, you can still go back in it. So let's say this area is dry and you're like, oh, I need more red. Well, just make it wet again. Okay, so this is watercolor pencils, all right?